who were willing to put their name to a letter calling for a change in government policy. And we at that time at Play England were advocating very strongly that the government should build on a lottery programme that had just started, and to follow that up with a national strategy for children's play to change the culture in our society so that the outdoor world became once again a place that parents were happy to let their children out into, to have those outdoor play experiences that all the experts were telling us are so important to them.
And is there still a need for an influence like the Safe Childhood Movement, or have things improved sufficiently since the letter went out?
I think they started to improve, and they've gone rapidly backwards since the economic crash and the change of government and the austerity measures that it's introduced, because children are in some ways an easy option for carts because they don't have the vote, they're not organised, they don't have an independent voice in policy discussions, and they need organisations like this one to speak out for them. And I think there are huge concerns. I think things are probably worse now than they were before the original letter, because with the constraints on public services and the increase in inequality and more families struggling financially, I think that tends to put ever greater pressure on children who were already, as we know from all the concerns originally raised in 2006, were already having a hard time trying to maintain a childlike domain within the modern world. So all of those pressures, I think, are now probably worse. And certainly one of the first things that the new government abandoned in its austerity programme was the play strategy, which was an ambitious 10-year programme to make the outdoor world a safe place for children to play, and that's gone. And yet all of the factors that made it an imperative are still there and increasing. So more traffic, more crime, the pervasive influence of the media into children's lives, commercialisation of childhood, sexualisation of childhood. The way the education policy is going, I would suggest, is backwards in terms of it recognising the importance of play even less than it did 5 years ago. And I think that's very, very worrying when you have a minister saying that free play isn't really important in early year settings. That runs counter to virtually every argument you will hear from any academic source on the subject of early child development, and it's really quite worrying.
Lots of other organisations about pressure groups and campaigns about childhood exist. What do you hope the Safe Childhood Movement can do that isn't already being done?
That's a good question. I don't know really. I mean, I'm open. It's interesting that it's coalesced, and there's obviously a need for it, otherwise it wouldn't have happened, because there's a lot of people have been willing to put their time and effort into it. And it's not an organisation yet as such. It doesn't have its own funding or constitution. It's not established, but a lot of people seem to have been willing to put serious thought, effort, energy and time. I mean, this is a weekend and there's 300 people downstairs going to stay to the bitter end to hear these issues aired. And so I think it speaks for itself that it's needed. What it achieves, I hope that it will put children's play, the importance of the child's domain, the importance of time and space in children's lives to be their own agents in their own lives, back on the agenda as an issue for government. This government has washed its hands of it. It doesn't think it's the business of government. It thinks its responsibility to children is to teach them the facts about history, to teach them the 3 R's. It's a very conservative approach to education policy that we have right now. And I hope that this conference and this movement that's represented here will put back on the policy agenda the responsibility of government to all of its citizens and their children to create space, planning, housing, parks, traffic, policing. All of these areas of public policy have an impact for good or ill on the playability and the child-friendliness of public space. And at the moment, it's a very unfriendly public domain for children, and that needs to change.
Can you pick out a high point from the conference so far?
Oh, so many. I loved Richard House. Can we stop,
Yeah.
cut for a minute while I just check my cheat sheet? Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, Philip Gamage was amazing, wasn't it?
Samuel. Okay. So, yes, well, Professor Philip Gamage and the child psychiatrist Sami Tamimi and Richard House, all of these very eminent academics from different perspectives on childhood, highlighting how important it is that children are given space to play from the earliest days and then right throughout their education and in other areas of their lives. I think that was very affirming to me because that's my profession, that's where I've come from. My background is as a play worker, and I was a big campaigner for the play strategy, and it gave me confidence that even though this government perhaps is not really open to revisiting the play strategy, which I think it's dismissed as a sort of new Labour excess. I think in the longer term, I think what the experts are saying is this has to be taken seriously as an area for public policy. So that's been a real highlight for me.
And do you think you'll leave on a note of optimism?
Well, yes, optimism because of what I just said, that there seems to be a consensus across a range of very serious academic disciplines that we need to take much more seriously our responsibility as a society to make space for children to play. So that's a good note for me.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
That's great.
Well done.